Don't Vote Labour Again, Episode 43. The Grooming Gangs, A Deep Dive, Part 4, Pakistani Culture and Islam. What is the belief that the rapists were acting on cultural, racial and religious lines based on? Well, in rural Pakistan, rape is quite common, as a kind of sport, as a punishment for so-called transgressive women, and as revenge in family feuds. Just across the border in Afghanistan, the Taliban are doing even worse things. In Pakistan, there is no age of consent for sex, only a minimum age of 16 for marriage. In Iraq, it is now 9. Why would this not survive a plane ride by someone's parents? Why would these backward views not be maintained by the older generations, fostered in their young, and then brought to bear against the host population? In the case of Rotherham, it is said that the Pakistani migrants all hailed from the 3 same villages in Kashmir. The author of the report into the Rotherham case, Professor Alexis J., mentioned this. I understood that the community in Rotherham were described as coming from possibly 3 villages in Kashmir, and that this identification was very important to them. Their traditions and relationships, these were not sophisticated, they were very traditional. I was told by many people that previous generations had a different view about women's place in their culture and their society that certainly wouldn't accord with any sense that we have. In terms of religion, the culture is of course informed by highly conservative versions of Islam. Deobandism, a sect of Sunni Islam within the fundamentalist Hanafi school, is widespread in Pakistan. The religious texts of Islam contain many positive accounts of sexual slavery, child marriage, violence towards non-believers and heretics, and unenlightened ideas about women. There is nothing to indicate a girl must have reached puberty in order to be married, as is the basic rule of thumb in most cultures. Without a more figurative or modern interpretation, Muslims who are inclined to be misogynistic, violent, or predatory are going to find justification in these texts. The Bible, of course, has also been twisted to justify violence. However, it does not encourage these things in the same way. Certainly, the teachings of Jesus in the New Testament are non-violent, encourage empathy, and are quite egalitarian. The Quran and the Hadiths, meanwhile, were written during a time of conquest to further the expansion of Islam as a world power. Rape and sexual slavery was a fact of warfare back then. The scriptures are clearly used by some Muslims to justify their behavior in the here and now. This is supported by the gangs calling their victims kuffar and generally not targeting their own kind, with exceptions. Clearly, the non-believer is fair game. When Laura Wilson was murdered, her killer texted another boyfriend of Wilson, saying, "Gonna send that kuffar bitch straight to hell." It is said by some that if these abusers did target Muslim girls, the community wouldn't stand for it and would punish them in a way that the police cannot. It doesn't help that many of these offenders are likely quite ignorant and uneducated, mentally challenged perhaps, and are not able to rise above their base instincts. When you put vulnerable girls and women, failed by a broken society, within reach of such people, they will take advantage. When combined with a politics of ethnic client groups, ghettoization and corruption, you have the perfect recipe for sexual abuse on an industrial scale. An imam, Dr. Taj Haji, said of the Oxford rape gang, race and religion were inextricably linked. Haji was the imam for the Oxford Islamic congregation, a moderate group that tries to include the wider non-Muslim community. He criticized other imams thus: "The view of some Islamic preachers towards white women can be appalling. They encourage their followers to believe that these women are habitually promiscuous, decadent and sleazy, sins which are made all the worse by the fact that they are kafirs and non-believers. Their dress code, from miniskirts to sleeveless tops, is deemed to reflect their impure and immoral outlook. According to this mentality, these white women deserve to be punished for their behavior by being exploited and degraded." This seems to be supported by an Asian counsellor cited by the Casey report. He appears to be blaming the girls for tempting and fooling the men. The girls, the way they dress, they don't look 14 to 15 years old. The way they make up, they look more adult. They go into clubs, get served in bars. It's very difficult for me. Very modern dress. They have been fooled, definitely, the British Asians. Another prominent Muslim voice in the rape gang issue is Majid Nawaz. There is also Roger Mia, a citizen journalist and former civil servant of Bangladeshi extraction. Mia has campaigned against the grooming gangs and alleged local government corruption in Oldham and Rochdale. Speaking on Andrew Gould's podcast, he said, "There are so many people from my background, particularly from my generation, who are horrified about what's taking place, but our voices are fewer and fewer." What we don't know is how much the offenders are driven by their religion, how observant they are of it, or exactly how they interpret it. Of course, as we see with Dr. Haji and Roger Mia, many Muslims are disgusted by what they have done, and some, arguably not enough, have spoken out about it. Islam's moral code aside, what these criminals have engaged in goes against its lifestyle directions. Extramarital sex, drugs and alcohol and prostitution are haram, although some jihadists believe if they are about to martyr themselves they are allowed to indulge these vices. The 9/11 attackers did this. There are so many other factors in these crimes, but to dismiss religion so readily as a factor does a disservice to the subject and to the victims. These are from my article series Don't Vote Labour Again, published on my Substack, link in description. I usually split each subject into smaller episodes. In the description you will find links to the other episodes. You can also check out my playlist to find every single one. Please support me in my work by subscribing to this channel, subscribing free to my Substack, and by liking and sharing. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon as we plumb the depths of this dreadful government.